It is 8:03. I will call this meeting to order. Certify the open meeting laws have been met.
Yes.
Mary's acknowledging. We have a 15-item agenda this morning. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
I'll second that.
Any questions, comments? I think Susan, I think we'll just leave you where you're at, yeah. Okay, no questions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Minutes from the previous meetings.
Move to approve.
Second.
And a second. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Item 5, public comment period. Members of the public will have up to a 15-minute block of time to comment on today's agenda items. Members may be present in person, call in to make such comments. Comment by telephone, call 715-538-1894. Public comment may be extended or curtailed at the discretion of the committee/board chair. Is there anybody here wishes to step up and comment on our agenda items today? Seeing none, and I don't hear the phone ringing, so at this point, I'm going to close that out and move on. Item 6, discussion/update/possible action on County Code of Conduct and Ethics Ordinance with Susan.
Morning. This is largely just a follow-up from last month. I know there were quite a few things that had to be looked at last month, so this is a check-in to see if you've had the opportunity to review what was previously sent, if you have any areas where you want me to move differently. Otherwise, I'll keep moving in the same direction and try to have a more polished version next month. But before going too far, I wanted, again, to check in and make sure it's consistent with what you are looking for. And there were some policy issues. For example, if you look at it, you know, for the ethics board, who do you want that to be made up of? How long should their terms be? Things like that, which are really, again, policy issues.
Anybody got questions in regard to this and how it's moving?
Are you looking for a recommendation or?
Some sort of direction on where you'd like to go. At one point, you guys have mentioned using exec finance as the ethics board. If you guys still want to do that, I could put that in there. It's however you want it to be.
I would lean towards that this committee be the one to
Yeah, that,
oversee that. Would be
yeah,
my
typically
opinion.
I think that would.
Any opposing opinions? Don't hear any, so I guess that would be something to work into.
What was the second part of that?
How long up for a term?
How long?
2
what?
years? How long for the term? 2 years, because that would be consistent with your terms as supervisors.
Right,
Yeah, that
yep,
makes
yep.
sense.
And then,
No, that's not to necessarily throw it out, that's to look at for possible adjustments every 2 years. Is that what we're
yes.
talking?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. And of course, we're just going through this to forward it on eventually to the whole county board. For definitions, so if I go to page 2 of 24, and I go under E2, so what this, if you look under 2, it says anything of value, and it is meant to prohibit or inhibit county officials and employees from getting anything of value during the course of their time with the county. And at the end, it says this term does not include compensation expenses paid by the county, political contributions lawfully made and reported, hospitality extended for non-governmental or business purposes other than an organization, or anything having less than $20 of value per occurrence, or less than, and I wasn't sure what your opinion was regarding that last phrase.
Just thinking out loud. If we're limiting to $20 an occurrence, do we need to put a max on there?
No, you don't.
Anybody
It
else?
seems appropriate.
So we'll just take that out. And then just as long as I have you, I might, this might be a larger conversation, but we have a donations policy. This donations policy, we need to look at how it was brought forward before. Those of you might remember it. I think it was roughly 2021. It was several years ago. It should have been brought to the full board, and ideally, it would have been part of the ordinance. There are already departments that are utilizing donations, and their recommendation so far has been just to follow the policy, but we need to incorporate that into our ordinance at some point. And so that's why there's a donations provision there, and it allows for those departments to utilize the policy that we have,
Okay.
but to memorialize that into an ordinance. This, I don't know if we need to determine today, but I want to put it out there. But donations exceeding what value should be fully recorded and accounted for by the receiving department. So at some point, that will need to be addressed. Is it $50? Is it $100? Is there something else? So just want to put that on your radar. And then any questions about it as a whole? About the policy or what it would look like if implemented? Okay, well, I will keep working on it then, and then I
Keep working. I have to
appreciate
admit,
the,
I did not read through this again prior to this morning, but, so,
I think it looks good. I mean,
thank you.
it's a lot of work. Thank
and for
you.
the donation amount, you probably have a better idea what's a reasonable number than we do. So I would ask for a recommendation
legally
for us to look at.
speaking.
Okay, I'll put something in, it'll probably be close to what I mentioned,
Okay.
and I'll bring it forward. I'll try to polish
Okay.
it up and bring another version forward for November. Thank
Okay.
you.
Anybody have any other questions on it or suggestions? Okay, with that, we'll say thank you. Now, the next item was the exit conference with the auditor regarding the 2024 audit. Are we on here? Oh, there you are. I didn't see you sitting in the corner. Sorry.
All right. I did just hand out kind of a one-page front and back. Did I get everybody with that? Okay. All right. And then you have your audit books. It looks like I see at least one of them, so. All right. Well, thank you for having me this morning. I'm Sheann Hediger with Baker Tilly. I'm the principal that oversees the annual audit process. We did our preliminary field work way back in December of '24, and then our final field work is May, June time period. We issued the financial statements and reporting and insights letter at the end of July, and then finished up the report on federal and state awards in September. So just last week, I think we issued that one. So I will briefly go over all three of those reports, starting off with the financial statement document, so that's your big main one. We did issue an unmodified opinion for 2024, meaning that we found the financial statements to be fairly stated in accordance with GAAP. Excuse me. Unmodified is the highest level of an opinion that you can receive, and consistent with previous years. Just to touch briefly, so the 3 pages of the financial statements titled the Independent Auditor's Report is really the only part of the financials that is us as the auditors giving you. We do prepare the rest of the document, but management is responsible for the content in there. So within the the opinion, we do state management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And then also responsible for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls over that financial reporting. We, as the auditors, are responsible for obtaining a reasonable assurance that the financials are free from material misstatement. Reasonable is a high level of assurance. It's not absolute, so we are not here looking at every transaction of the county. We do sampling, we use materiality thresholds, and we assess risk and focus our procedures on those areas. We exercise our professional judgment. We identify the risks of material misstatements, obtain an understanding of those internal controls over financial reporting, and then evaluate the appropriateness of accounting policies and estimates. So then getting into some of the numbers, so I'm going to focus on the handout that I gave you to go over some of the financial highlights of the year. Starting with your general fund balance, this is going to be one of the most important metrics within your financials to assess the health of the county. Having a healthy fund balance in your general fund helps with any budgeting shortfalls, gives you flexibility for unexpected expenses throughout the year. So the details of the fund balance, there are 5 categories listed here in order of liquidity and restriction. So your general fund balance falls in 4 of the 5 categories at the end of 2024. First being non-spendable. So that is amounts that are to be maintained intact because they're in a non-spendable form. That $518,000 is made up of the long-term tax certificates and deeds, so delinquents that may or may not be collected over time, and then some prepaid expenses. You don't have any balances in the restricted category. The committed is amounts that you as the board have set aside for specific purposes through formal resolution. So that 1.2 million is the workers' comp fund that's set aside. And then assigned fund balance is again that funds that the county has set aside for intended use, but not as formally committed. That 2.3 million is made up largely of the non-lapsing funds for the various departments, and then any budgeting carryovers, so things that you budgeted to spend in 2025 out of fund balance. And then the remaining almost 8.9 million is the unassigned, so that's your residual, unrestricted, unassigned fund balance to be used. Total fund balance at the end of 2024 was 12.9 million. And that is up about 1.9 million over 2023. The next kind of middle of the page here is to look at a measure of adequacy of your fund balance. So we compare the available fund balance, which is made up of your committed, assigned, and unassigned. Those are the amounts that you have discretion over how it gets used. So that total is 12.4 million compared to the general fund expenditures for 2024 of 18.7 million. So how much do you have built up compared to an annual expenditure amount, if you were to get no monies in the door going forward? So that total is 66%, which equates to about 8 months of reserves on hand. The blue line on that graph is the Government Finance Officers Association recommends a minimum of 2 months. So that would be, a bare minimum. We say 6 months is a better cushion. You guys are sitting at 8 months. So that's a good, healthy fund balance to have, but not over it. You're not sitting on too many reserves. So I would say, that's a good amount to have. You have that adequate amount for cash flows as needed to offset timing of when revenues come in, and then handling some of those unexpected expenditures that are bound to happen. The next section then is the general fund income statement. So looking at that, I mentioned $1.9 million increase from 23 to 24. So we have the first column is the actual revenues and expenditures, the middle column being what you budgeted and planned for, and then 2023 as a reference. So you had planned for a loss in 2024 of 3.2, 3.3 million, compared to an actual gain of 1.9 million. So much better performance than you had budgeted for. Looking at the difference in revenues, so you're about $1.5 million over budget on revenues. That, a lot of that is in investment income. You're about $574,000 over budget. And then the transfer in from human services was not budgeted for, but that was $672,000 from human services over to general fund. The flip side, the expenditures, about 3.7 million under budget. There are details in your financial statements, pages 59 to 63 has a more detail by department. Some of the largest variances of, under budget spending, the other conservation development programs were about 641,000 under budget. Land records was about 447,000 under budget. And then the workers' comp insurance expense, you had budgeted 1.3 million and only had actual expenses of 8,500. So that was the largest, almost $1.3 million under budget there. All right, then looking at cash and investments. So this is all funds, so moving on from just looking at general fund to now all funds of the county. Keep in mind, this is a point in time, so this is cash on 12/31/24. Cash did decrease from 23 to 24. A lot of that being highway had about $2.2 million decrease in their cash funds. And then in addition, just overall accounts payable at the end of 2023, so expenses that you had incurred in 23 were then paid in 24. That was about $1 million of cash used. Restricted funds were relatively similar from 23 to 24. That is about almost half of that is healthcare center restricted funds, 218,000. And then 296,000 is funds left from the jail bonds to be spent yet. And then the fiduciary funds of 868,000, those are not county funds that cannot be used for county operations. That's our funds that are held for other entities. All right, then moving on to some debt metrics. Outstanding debt at the end of 2024 was about 67.7 million. There was no new general obligation debt issued in 2024, and principal and interest payments were made as scheduled. So, about a $5 million decrease in general obligation debt from 23 to 24. The county's total debt capacity of 176 million, that number is calculated as 5% of the county's equalized value of taxable property. And so the county at the end of 24 had used about 38.4% of the debt capacity. That continues to go down. I think 21, 22, when you issued the jail bonds, that's when it really spiked up to about that 50%. So as you continue to pay down the debt and you have a rising tax base, so that debt capacity grows each year as well. So giving you, bringing that percentage down where it's probably a little more comfortable now that the jail bonds were a large undertaking and we knew that number was going to spike, so. Yeah.
Is that average number through the state, 38%?
I would say it's lower.
Is it?
Yeah, but again, because you had a big project,
Right.
you took on more debt. If you were at that 50% without a big project, and it was more like borrowing for operation type things, I would be concerned, but, if there was a plan in place for that borrowing and you're not continuing to grow your debt, so. All right, then the other side of the handout, looking at some of the other funds of the county. So you have a number of special revenue funds where the revenues that come in there are restricted or committed or assigned for specific purposes. Not too many big swings, year over year. A couple of things to note, the public health fund did see a decrease in fund balance. A lot of that's the higher expenses with the county process reviews that are happening with the consultants, some technology upgrades. So a lot of that hit in public health without the corresponding revenue this year. The opioid settlement fund is seeing increases. There was no expenses of those funds in 2024, so that's just continuing to get those opioid settlement payments in. Let's see, if the farmland preservation grant that's been zero for a couple of years, that fund was actually closed out after 2022, so that will go away then next year on this handout. Debt service fund remained fairly stable. You're levying for your tax payment or your debt payments, so almost a break even as expected. Capital projects fund, not too much happening to the fund balance there. You continue to have projects and then they're funded through that fund. Highway, I mentioned before, the cash and investments in highway did decrease about 2.2 million. There is a statement of cash flows on page 12 of your financial statements, so you can see how that cash balance was used. One of the biggest factors, I guess, was in 2024, you did not have debt proceeds that transferred into highway fund as you have in previous years. The working capital is at 3.7 million, so you have 3.7 million more in current assets to pay current liabilities. Still an adequate balance. It did decrease from 23 because of those cash reserves going down. And then the net position for the highway fund did decrease about 1.5 million from 23 to 24. However, unrestricted net position still makes up about 22% of the highway fund, so that's a fair amount. It's in the positive this year, so that's good. There were still some reserves on hand for highway at the end of the year. And then the last metric on here, again, kind of jumping back to debt. So this one looks at how much of your principal and interest, how much do principal and interest make up of your total non-capital expenses for the year. So you paid just over $5 million for principal and interest compared to non-capital expense of $34.5 million. So your debt service makes up about 14.5% of your total expense. One metric that bond rating agencies look at is this, to make sure that they like to see a maximum of 20%. So they don't want to see your debt service being over 20% of your total expense. For the last 3 years, the county's consistently been below that, so that is a good result. It's good to see that you're not leveraged too hard into debt. So that are some of the highlights of the numbers within the financials. Any other questions, I guess, in the financials at this point? Otherwise, I'll jump to the other reports.
Any questions?
All right.
Okay.
The report that we issued just here in September last week, the report on federal and state awards. So this is we look mostly at compliance around the federal and state awards, and also looking at controls over those compliance. This one has two opinions issued. Both were unmodified, so we found that there was no material noncompliance. There were some findings within the report, but just a touch, so you had, how much? Sorry. So the county spent just under $5 million of federal funds in 2024 and just under $3 million of state funds. The programs that we looked at for 2024 on the federal side was the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, so your ARPA funds that you spent down. And then on the state side, we tested the elderly and handicap aids, the basic county allocation, and ADRC. So looking largely at a lot of human services programs on the state side of things. As mentioned, we did have 8 findings in total, 2 of those being over financial reporting, because we, as the auditors, prepare the financial statements and we propose material journal entries throughout the year or throughout the audit process. We are required to report a material weakness over financial reporting. Ultimately, you know, like I said, the management and the county do take responsibility for the financial statements, but we do have to disclose that to you, that you do have that weakness. Sorry, I said you had 2 findings. That was the only one over financial reporting. So the other 7 findings are over the various federal and state awards that we tested. Several of these are repeats from the previous year and are, I would say, largely caused because of turnover that you've had over the last few years, just getting new people up to speed on these programs. So based on the responses and corrective actions, I think most of these will go away in 2025 because of the timing. So if we identified the finding for 2023's audit, that wouldn't have been until, you know, this time of 24. So it takes almost a full year to correct things. So based on the corrective actions, I would anticipate many of these to go away in 25's audit. But that is a report that goes to the federal government and to the state agencies that provide the funds. They always give a letter after the fact, you know, probably 6 months or so from now, to say that they either want to see corrective action or they accept the findings as are. And yeah. So any questions there on that report? All right. The last one then is the reporting and insights from the 2024 audit. It's kind of the blue colorful page. This one's just a summary of the audit, how it went. It's a letter to management and you as the board. I've touched on a few of these things already. It goes over the auditor's responsibilities for the audit, our approach and the results. There was one new accounting standard implemented for 2024 around compensated absences. Just looked at how you figure out what liability to put on the books. There was no material or significant change with that. So just notifying you that this was implemented and run through the financials, but did not result in any material changes. I touched on the internal control matters, so the material weakness over financial reporting is detailed within here. And then the required communications is pages 8 through 11. Just goes over, again, any changes in accounting policies, the significant estimates that we identified. If there were any significant or unusual transactions, we would notify you of those. If we had any difficulties or disagreements with management, that would be included here. Always happy to report. We did not have any of those instances. Everybody was wonderful to work with and responsive and cooperative. The corrected misstatements. So I mentioned we did have some material entries. Those are included within this letter. And then we have a section looking ahead on upcoming accounting standards. Nothing for 2025 that I anticipate to be much of a lift, but we will continue to work with finance departments and management to make sure that all accounting policy or accounting standards are properly implemented. And then the last couple pages 35 to 37, is the two-way audit communication. This is the look ahead to the next audit to give you some insights on the nature, scope, and timing of our audit. Also gives some prompting questions if there's ever anything that comes to your minds or to your attention throughout the year that we should know as the auditors. We do encourage you to reach out to us and let us know if there's any areas specifically that we should be looking at. So with that, my contact information is on the first page of that letter, if you ever do have questions or concerns. But I will welcome any questions at this point, too.
Anybody? Apparently you did a real good job.
Great. Well, I do want to give a big thank you to the county staff. Mary being, new to the position, it's a lot to jump into the audit process. We ask a lot of questions. We bother a lot of people in different departments as well. So just really appreciate the work of the staff.
Okay,
Always like working down here.
with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 8, Administrator's 26 budget presentation.
All right, thank you. Good morning to everybody. Let's see here, I'm gonna pull up and share with you. Okay, so bringing forward to the 2026 recommended budget, I just, to start, want to thank everybody that's been helpful in working through this process. Amy Bergerson here with helping put all the financials together. We worked with Government Solutions again, Steve Corbell and Mike Konecki. And then, of course, Brian Riley, who's going to be on later to talk about the debt conversation, as well as all department heads and their fiscal managers. And so it's a long process, and we'll kind of touch base on that once again. So just as a reminder of where we're at. This whole presentation is going to talk about a number of things here: budget process, county fund review, our mission, vision, strategic priorities, how property and debt taxes support Trempealeau County, our budgeted expenses. We'll go over equalized values, net new construction, population change, things to think about as we grow and change, our debt review again, revenues, wages and benefits review, staffing requests and changes, the mill rate, taxpayer comparisons, the tax bill impact, and our budget forecast for the year. And then we'll get into our capital improvements plan that we've set up, as well as, again, that debt discussion. So a lot to cover, a lot to think about. It's kind of a moving target as we prepare and bring this forward. I'm very happy with where we're at right now. I think it's a good budget. I think, as I had shared with you in our previous, where I gave you just a little overview, I'm thinking about some things to come that'll be a part of our conversation when we're talking about health insurance and wage and that impact. So This process, as I stated, is pretty long and intense as we start in May. Department heads working on capital project requests, and they put those all together and talking about the next year, right? We're building out a 5-year plan at least, and looking at the horizon. And so they have to look back through that and reevaluate and think out that further next year so that we're planning ahead. I review that, talk with the department heads, go through all of that planning and determine if there's anything that we can hold off on or things that we can, that we need to include. So in July, departments start working on their operating budget requests, and so they put all that together. And then as they've submitted those in August, I start meeting with each of the departments and sit down with them and go through all of the budget planning. In September then, we start to put together the operating budget. This is the team that I talked about with Amy, Steve, and Mike, and also other fiscals within the county. And then in October, that's where we're bringing forward today this reviewing the recommended budget, and then we'll have that follow-up budget workshop for all of the county board next week, and then in November, we have a public hearing, of course. Just to review, our county fund review is looking at the Trempealeau finances. We have the government funds on one side and our enterprise funds on the other side. So both highway and the healthcare center are enterprise funds as a part of the county overall, but they are set up just a little different on that side. If you remember, we went through the process of strategic planning and thinking about how does our vision and mission drive what we do and drive the budget that we put forward, so, and how we think about that. Our vision for Trempealeau County was determined. It envisions safe, healthy, vibrant communities where all people are supported, empowered, and prepared to thrive today and into the future. So how does the budget prepare us? That's the overarching, broad view of what we do. And then our mission, Trempealeau County exists to serve its people by responsibly stewarding public resources, delivering essential services, enhancing quality of life, and protecting the natural environment for current and future generations. So we just use that as a guide as we continue through our budgeting process. And the 4 top priorities that were put into place through that process, number 1 came far and above everything else, was financial stability. And so that's what we work on most when we're talking about budget, is how we can provide stability and provide growth also in what we're doing. And that, of course, impacts number 2, 3, 4, and everything else we do. Economic development, our communications, which we've made really good strides on already, and growth in our communications area, and then our public infrastructure and connectivity. So if you look at 2026 and the percent of levy by department and where we're sitting this year, you can see on the screen then we have similar areas where the percentages fall. There are some shifts because of changes in organizational development as far as where positions fall within Trempealeau County government. For instance, one of the positions in the clerk's office has been moved to the administration office to form a business financial office. Emergency management moved out of the sheriff's office, if you remember that from last year. So that is a decrease in one area and an increase in another. If you look at the next slide, it just shows basically the percentages broke down on that and where that each department falls as far as overall percentage of the what is supported through the county. So what does our 2026, what do our 2026 property taxes support for the county? I will just touch on a few things here. First of all, of course, health insurance costs. ETF projects an 11% increase in health insurance expenses. The county has to balance how those rising costs are shared between employees and county. I kind of talked to you about that the last time when I did an overview. Currently, and historically, employees have received 88% of the lowest cost healthcare plan within the options that they have available to them. That is built into the union contract, that's required by the union contract. We have built that into this budget again, so that we're able to provide that to employees as well. And I'll talk to you more about what that looks like as we go forward. The budget provides for a 2% across-the-board COLA with no step increases, and that means the entire pay scale would shift upward to maintain equity. I've approved all of the reclassifications that were brought forward. I brought those to you and explained the reclassifications. Those are built into this budget as well. When you look at a 2% across the board, it sounds low. I'm sure for employees that sounds low. It may sound that way to others. I will say in talking with other administrators from other counties in the area, it's similar. There's 0, 1, 2. It's not out of line. I guess the bigger thing that we will talk about more as we get into that is that the wage study that I think is really important. So anybody that's already making market rate is going to be fairly compensated and stay within market rate. Anybody that's below market rate with that wage study would have a boost. So that is a part of that built into this budget. In operational support, the budget also accounts for inflationary expenses and funds equipment requests to ensure county employees can perform their work effectively and efficiently. I just want to point out that because everybody else raises their prices, that impacts us as well. And so our contracted costs increase with our partners. For instance, last year we talked a lot about translators and how expensive that cost has gotten. There's few of them and demand. This year, talking in the judicial offices, it's talking about physicians and how those costs have elevated quite a bit, and it's for the same reasons. Few physicians that are available to help us, their contract costs go up, and so that affects our budget. All right, so all position requests were carefully reviewed, and we'll talk more about that. Those that are included in budget are considered essential to meeting those organizational goals and kind of some of our priority goals that we talked about in our strategic planning. Although there are areas, of course, that we might want to also include. It's again, what can we fit into a budget in each cycle? So. This year, we did boost a bit of the Health and Human Services state funds that are provided by WMCR into a higher budgetary level supporting our Health and Human Services. So if you remember, we've talked about here as well as when Sheehan provided from Baker Tilly and saying that a lot of money was coming back from the Health and Human Services payments through the state, and that goes into our general fund. We are taking a bit more of a portion of that to help actually provide budgeting operational costs from those funds. For the future, as we continue, I'm expecting that levy restrictions are staying in place and it remains difficult, and so every year we've kind of got to consider how we build this budget, and in the future we may consider strategically leaving some vacant positions open throughout the year to create budgetary flexibility. And as far as that, we've got it in the budget, and we're capturing some of those funds for budgetary purposes for that. So moving on to the next slide, which talks about budgeted expenses. And if you take a look, I wanted to just point out the change that you're seeing from 2025 to 2026 in some of these areas, and highlight the growth in some areas and why, because I think that's something I'm sure interest to individuals is why are we seeing bigger increases in some of these areas. So in the sheriff's office, we have to remember that union contract comes with a cost. It's at 5% union wages. That affects not only their wages, but also their fringe benefits and affects their higher levels of costs for other benefits then. We've also got increased costs at the jail, inmate medical supplies, as well as meal costs, kind of big jumps there. And again, if who we contract with, they raise their prices, we have to figure out how to pay for those increases as well. We also have increased costs associated with extra hours of mental health services that will be provided to inmates. So that's a positive as far as being able to offer additional services. When you look at Health and Human Services, again, contracted expenses as for our clinical psychiatrist, counseling services, software and software licensing is a big part of the increase for Health and Human Services. It would make sense we'd see bigger jumps then from those two areas because of their bigger budgets, how they touch others. So the healthcare center, you see an increase that is funded by their user fees that they have through medical, Medicaid and Medicare that they expense for. Through the library, just as a point, we do fund them at 100% by the county. That doesn't, that's not included in our levy limit, but it does get paid through the county. So, and then debt service, just pointing out that the higher area of cost for debt service is including that Justice Center and other outstanding debt. And we knew that we were going to see a higher rate at the beginning of when that started, when you started taking that on. I know we had had some feedback, and I've talked to Amanda from the library system about coming to present, and so we'll get that on another meeting at some point. But I know Chair Larson had some communication.
Yeah, I'll just throw it up here. Anybody else can look at it. It's a thank you card from the Strum Library for the funding that we've given that unofficially probably made their summer reading program possible. So anybody wants to look at it, it's just.
And it's not unusual. You have to provide funding for 70% of the libraries by law, but rural areas do often do more than that because of libraries being more of a community-related center in our smaller communities. So, but that is a choice from the board, but it is again included in this budget.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I also included in the packet today, there's statistics from the Winding Rivers Library for the exec finance to look at. And then there's also a copy of the Village of Trempealeau's library and their statistics as far as circulation, programming that they provide, things like that. And it's kind of in a concise one document paper, so that's a easy read.
Thank you for getting that too. So moving on, we've got what's our financial condition as far as equalized value. You can see we've had nice growth and we continue to rise there. And our net new construction trends, this shows we're kind of up and down every year. And so that increased ability for us to levy for the net new construction increase helps us. But I think it would be good to be able to look at, and I think this, let me get to that in a minute here. I've got a follow-up slide that I'll kind of talk about and saying, how can we get that to be, yearly, and so that we don't have the downward trends and things. And our number 2 priority for strategic planning was economic development. So in thinking about that, how do we attain that? Just something to drive our work for the future. When you're looking at population growth, you can see that we've had a nice upward trend, a little bit stagnant from just over the last couple of years. But if you listen to the Department of Administration, our population projection report shows Trempealeau County among the fastest growing in the state. projected to grow by 11% from 2030 to 2040, and then by 13% from 2040 to 2050. This would be important to, again, drive our strategic planning as far as economic development as we talk about housing. Housing is economic development, and so it's a good way to look at what are our needs and how do we build that into our planning for the future. So, in looking at debt and reviewing that, Trempealeau County is rated AA- by the S&P Global with a stable outlook. And that stable outlook had changed over the last year. I just want to remind you that in meeting with the S&P, they liked the changes as far as bringing on a county administrator to oversee operations. They liked the fact that there was a 5-year plan, that there was a planning going on for our debt and for capital improvements. So those are all things that structure really helps when we are looking at our ratings, and again, growing that to hopefully become even better so that we get lower interest rates as we go forward. The debt is structured to decrease in steps to provide taxpayer relief or space for future debt issues to offset tax rate impact. And so to remember that because of levy limits, and I know a lot of you were at WCA, and I know a lot of the conversation in the room was talking about levy limits and the push and the shift that people or counties and cities, villages, everyone has shifted to making to more emphasis on their debt capacity because that's outside the limits of our levy limits. So we have plenty of room in that, and so it does help us make sure that we can continue to provide necessary improvements that we need, whether it's in IT or roads or many of the other projects that we have going on here. So this schedule does not include the healthcare center debt, which that's currently funded by the healthcare center operations, so it's not included in this schedule. And then this year's request for the CIP is lower than expected. Last year we had, I'd laid out like a 5-year plan looking at about 6.5–7 million, and this year it is lower at 4.2. We'll get more into that when we get to the debt part. Here's just a bar graph of this and looking at what that looks like and the impact of 2026 on primarily, of course, the Justice Center, but the impact that we have continuing to take care of our the improvements necessary. Mill rate, so we are ending up at 522 per thousand equalized value for 2026. It's a 1.92 increase from 2025, or 10 cents per 1,000 of valuation. I'll get to a slide here in a little bit too to tell you what does that mean to the taxpayer. This is one area that I thought, again, in talking about our net new construction, is helpful to think about in the future and looking at where is the construction happening and where isn't it. And as we talk about economic development, do we want to focus on areas that are already experiencing growth in economic development so that we prioritize those areas? Is it more important that we're looking at areas that are not, and how we can provide help to other areas? But I think overall it gives us good guidance on saying, well, some areas are stronger than others, and how can we continue to, again, instead of this up down, create stable and actual further growth. So additional revenue estimates that are included in this budget, and I want to just point these out. We've got the increase in highway aids, the circuit court. We did a lot of fighting for increases with the state legislature as far as supporting mandated services. And I remember Chair Austin and myself and Supervisor Klein went to Madison and talked with our representatives. We invited them here and talked to them. the increase of millions of dollars that they put into the circuit court results in an increase to us of $15,000. So I just want to point out, it's something, but we still struggle to get our mandated services provided at the level that they should be provided at. Child support, we see an increase there. Conservation aids, again, that's a piece, the talking point that we had with the WCA and meeting with our legislators. Shared tax revenue, that's positive. We see a nice increase there. The sheriff and his work in boarding the extra prisoners from Buffalo County. Our net new construction, that allows for that levy increase up to that amount. Again, we're adding the Wimker state funding into our budget in our operations. We had TID termination. The opioid funds applied to offset a position at the sheriff's office that is related and working then on opioid individuals. And this is the piece, again, of talking about, that will come up here, is talking about our health insurance and how we continue to move forward and the requests for new positions or needs that we have and how somehow we have to offset that. So there is the removal of the subsidized health insurance deductible here. It's a reduction of expenses actually, but in the amount of $178,000, that opens that up within our budget. So I just wanted to point out a comparison here of our wage increases to consumer price index increases. So typically, we will compare ourselves to other counties to see where we're at with other counties. I just wanted to take a look at the consumer price index to see where we were at here. If you look at only through 2025, because I don't know what 2026 will be for a consumer price index, I'm giving you a plan of where my recommendation is for 2026 for us, but it's not included in these numbers. So if you look at the consumer price index increases from 20 to 25, that's at 23.8%. Our wage increases from the same time frame were 19.75. But if you consider the subsidization of the deductible for health insurance, it kind of gets us in pretty close to that same range that we're seeing with consumer price index. So I just wanted to point that out and saying, while we always have to look at the broader piece of the puzzle here and saying, are we fairly compensating? And unfortunately, oftentimes, we as employees like to look at our pay only, but that's a conversation I brought forward to you previous in saying, if individuals want market rate pay, we've got to think about how can we balance that? And a big shift in that has been shifting costs of the health insurance otherwise to keep people at market. So that is reflected here. WRS contribution rates in retirement general employee category is up 6.95% to 7.2. I'm sure projecting an increase in number of people that are going into the system for retirement. And then as well, the protected employee category is actually down 18.95 to 18.5. I told you about the compensation already, but included, I think, a bigger part of the story and piece of that with that 2% is the wage study that I recommend and that is budgeted for in this budget to earmark $60,000 for implementation of that wage study in July of 2026. So we have that, and I'll talk about this a little bit more as we go as well. So here we're taking a look at the health insurance changes. I have here at the top, removing the $500 and $1,000 deductible supplement from budget. That is that estimate of $178,000. We're seeing that 11% increase in health insurance premiums. I know when I talk to my colleagues in other counties that are self-funded for health insurance, they are not seeing that type of rise. So we, being an ETF, does present a higher cost to us. I think it's worth evaluating in the future. Certainly, I find value in the ETF program, but I do think that the costs continue to really rise at much higher sometimes than others. So just looking at this first screen, this is the employer. So we like to look at plans with the single and family plans with dental so that we can compare, because there's a lot to compare otherwise. So single with dental, the county would pay $956.86 per individual then per month. With family plan is $2,353.98. This shows an increase then of $46.37 per month on average for the employer, and 99 cents and 27 cents per month on average for the employer, for the family plan. So 46 is for single, 99 for the family plan. Overall, you can see down at the bottom here where I've identified the county overall in the past 5 years on single plans has gone up $231, and the family plan $496. Next slide looks at, well, what does that mean to the employee then? Most people choose the Quartz West plan. That is the plan within our state plans that is most accessible, and it is the most affordable. So if you're looking at single with dental there, $130.48 for the cost there. That's $18.57 more a month. And family with dental is $321. That is an increase of $46.30 per month. So in looking at, again, the 5-year overall in the county's share, if you look at the bottom again, the county on average the employer on average over the last 5 years saw a $7 a month increase in their premium. And a family plan saw an overall increase on average of $17 a month over that 5-year period. So again, looking at this and talking about the cost of health insurance, I've just given you an article. It's half of employers plan to shift healthcare costs to employees. This is out of SHRM. It's the Society of Human Resource Management. I'm sure you've heard headlines, news, the rising costs of healthcare and how do we manage that. So it's to say, I don't know, I think myself speaking, it's wonderful, and I think everybody wants to have wonderful health insurance. The costs of that are rising exponentially, and so it's our duty to try to figure out how we manage that. I will say, Trempealeau County, in looking at these costs, and as I shared with you, that $18.57 a month increase for a single plan with dental and $46.30 a month for family plan with dental is still very reasonable. And when I look at other public entities within the region, Whitehall School District and Independence School District, their premiums are higher, and they have much higher deductibles that they're seeing, and so they are seeing substantially right now than even the 500 to 1,000 shift that I've included in this budget. If you take a look at the next page, this looks at expenses by category, and you can see right there the benefits and how that does impact our budget. This includes all benefits as far as fringe also, but that again, it's a very heavy lift on the county, even in comparison to salaries. And when you look at public sector entities or even business. I mean, you know, personnel, that's a high cost to any business, to any government and institution, so. But we provide a good place to work, right? And we do have really good benefits. I just want to point out that last year we added a couple of holidays to our benefits. That puts us in the top tier in, I don't have all of the counties included in this, but from the responding counties, that puts us in the top tier. If you can guess who has 17 holidays? Anybody? Yep. And who has 13? Milwaukee. Yeah, so we're right behind them, and I think that's, that was a good boost last year that provided, that balance that's really important to employees. So I think as we move forward, those are good conversations as we, talk about if, you know, affording certain things and how we can afford, that work-life balance, continue to afford that. Okay, so we had the new position requests. I shared these with you at that last meeting and taking a look at where needs were. And so these are all of the requests. Some of them did not have any impact to the budget. For instance, the human services, 2 of those positions are state funded, so they move forward. Facilities and parks, I'll just take a look here. I'm moving that administrative support, the reorganization of staff to help support facilities director and parks manager. No cost to that, we'll just shift that individual. If you look at other areas of increase, we've got the paralegal for the DA's office, assistant corp counsel. Here's a research information, again, just to look at comparables on attorneys that are within counties. This is available data that we could get. But I think it shares really how reasonable it is to expect that we're supporting that position better. And just to think about how that office, we make sure that, again, that individual has work-life balance as well. So I think if you look at, you know, we're kind of in that middle range where you find a little bit of a mix of everything, but the 40-some thousand usually have 2 or 3. Corp counsel, we're at 30,000, of course, but then you see Oneida, who has 2+ part-time. I think with the busyness of our courts and such, that's reasonable. So I think, and that's where we made it a priority, or I made it a priority to fit that into this budget. We've got the jail programming officer that was brought forward to you and talking about the needs within the jail and providing some assistance there. Then the CLTS, social worker, caseworker, those are 2 positions, again, not, no cost to the county. The APS and crisis social worker, caseworker at 30,000, because that position is, again, partially funded through state dollars. And then included in this budget is a finance director position. As I've shared with you before, I think it's really important that government is a large business that needs a administrator to move the large organization to stay on track, to provide vision and guidance and oversight. But I also do believe that $100+ million budget should have an individual that oversees that specifically. In most counties, and I'm going to get you better information on this as far as the numbers, but I started research on counties. Most counties have moved to taking finances out of the clerk's office. Again, because that is an elected position, you know, you would have a finance director who is qualified and oversees your budget annually. So right now, we are doing it through contracted services, but I do believe that there is room for improvement and savings yet, even with bringing on an additional person to oversee those finances. Okay, staffing changes that are not included. The additional deputy clerk, clerk of courts, that office is still in transition, and so that was not included, although I think there could be value in at least a part-time person to help with, again, that piece of providing the ability for individuals to have time off. There was the request for a human resource director to split the two positions of county administrator, human resource director. Two thoughts on this. Number one, as we talked about, well, we're putting in our UKG information system software at this time. So the hope and plan is that is going to free up time with one of our employees to focus more on HR issues rather than entering data into a system. And so I'm hoping to see that change in the next year so that that would free up time for the administrator to focus on where I think some of our priorities are, again, in that economic development area. And I would just say, just to point out that that is a priority area. So two thoughts again on, as we continue to look at that and reevaluate to make sure that you are finding that there's enough time given to the priority areas like economic development. And I say that because you had an HR director full-time, and you replaced it with a dual position, which is just, you can't do both maybe necessarily to the extent that you want to because of the time factor, because that is a, human resource director is a full-time position. So, but again, I'm hopeful within the next year that we'll have some efficiencies in that office that will help there. As we continue to grow and we see services, as far as we've had facilities requesting some help in that area, we've been talking about how to provide some help there as well as in parks. If we continue to grow outdoor opportunities, it would make sense to keep evaluating their needs in our parks and also with facilities. All right, we're going to move on to the actual wage study conversation. So that is a hefty price in talking about the cost of a wage study. I think we have to think about this in a few different ways. As we continue to look at issues where there are people that are not being market rate pay, it's looking at compression issues then that happen within and overall of the overall organization. So it's good to reevaluate at times to make sure that we're market rate, but also to make sure that the compression issue isn't a problem and that we're balancing both of those things. So another thing to point out is just, again, I know looking at that is a price tag, but if you think back to, and I don't want anyone to have nightmares about Act 10 and the time before with going through union contracts and negotiations, and there were a lot of costs that were involved in that period of time. And so we don't have that. We don't have that right now. So I would say if you're doing this, especially in times of high inflationary periods, which we've seen, I think it's important that we make sure we do those wage studies to make sure that we continue on that market rate pay and competitive pay for individuals. So that's included in the budget. Finally, I just want to talk about then the increase of 1.92% that I shared with you earlier. Based on countywide levy, actual rates and amounts vary, of course, but just to give you an idea of what that impact means on a home value of 150, the difference is going to be $1,475 a year. $200,000 home, you can see, and then up to $350. So I know we have some impact, of course. Most of this is due to the increased debt service that we have, but because I don't think it's reasonable to think that with all of the increases that a county is expected to pay from the private sector passes on their costs to us, that it's not unreasonable, and I think that we've tried to keep it very low as possible in order to, but still meeting our needs. So just as a review, looking at the budget forecast, tax levy rate will increase slightly due to debt obligations. Net new construction, again, that approximate jump that we had there of the 174,663. Our sales tax right now, we have seen growth, so we're up since 2024 at an amount of 186,048, which is very positive, and we are talking, or we have data from Forward Analytics that it does look like, we should end with the end of the year with that type of progression, so that's positive for the county. It's not included in this budget just because I tend to be very conservative when you're looking at that sales tax. And so I think that's just a positive, again, for us in the end, for our general fund, but at this point, at least, I have not added that into the budget. I would say continued growth in there. I would say you could, again, offset some of that to the budget in the future. That might help us. You got the addition of positions, the elimination of the subsidized deductibles, the health insurance premium increase, debt service increasing, and then the general fund growth from 4.1 million or so up to 8.8 million. That puts us to 47%, which is very healthy. And so I think that, again, drives our future conversation on where the county goes when you're talking about your priorities. And one of the main areas is being fiscally responsible, which you have done well, and I think this budget does a nice job of. But when you look at also, how do you, again, provide net new construction at a level area or further growth, might look at some of these things, and so I'm just throwing out some ideas. This is a general fund. We have identified and set aside the 1.5 million for roads if needed. I have set aside, and you'll get the copy of our KIP here in showing that 250,000 then was included out of the general for office furniture, which we had talked about at the end of the year, and things got tight, and we wanted to make sure that we could take this project forward. So that is identified in there. And then I'd really like to focus on future discussion for creating a housing fund development revolving loan fund. I have worked with other entities that already implement this type of program that are available and could work with us on that in order to help spur housing development, which we've seen that population growth is interested in this area. So how could we be a conduit to igniting that a little bit more? The upcoming capital improvements projects, we're going to give you that handout right now. So specifically, I think part of the conversation, and I'll just point out two things, that one, in maintenance, I'd like to, talk about innovation and thinking about how we are using technology. And as we get into these new software systems and thinking about how we use those systems to make us more efficient, those software systems can help us within, in as far as when people retire, absorbing possible positions. That's to the future to continue to evaluate. But also in maintenance, looking at the autonomous floor scrubber. There has been a need because we have this big, beautiful building and it's been increased in size, and we're looking at how our existing staff can continue to take care of that. We're looking at this autonomous piece of equipment that could help with cleaning floors to free up time for individuals within maintenance. I've also talked to you previously about centralized garbage, centralized mail, so that we can save time, right? And so they can use time in other areas. The bigger talking point, I think, is what we talked about last year in the Economic Development Fund that I have incorporated again into the Parks and Economic Development line item at $500,000. And that's to be, if you wanted to adjust that again as you did last year. The opportunities I see with that is using those funds for a housing study so that we could look at a possible housing fund to jumpstart housing, and a hotel study. There have been a lot of requests for the possibility of hotels, and when quite honestly, I travel in the southern part of the county over the weekend in all of the tourism that's happening here. It certainly is could be of interest, I would think. Trail enhancement, I am in conversations about the possibility of what that would look like right now and how we might be a partner in some trail enhancement. Make My Move, if you've heard about that, that was another group that was at WCA. I had talked with them early this summer. There's funding set aside by the state of Wisconsin to work with this group to have them market and highlight our area to individuals in high-cost areas of the country. So I would say like Florida and Texas and California, places like that. People are looking to leave the unaffordability of those areas, and they're interested in beautiful areas that offer a lot. And so Make My Move works with the state, and there's a grant opportunity that Make My Move would receive 80%, or I'm sorry, the state pays 80% of the costs, and we pay 20%. In order to do this, they work to bring in 10 households from out of the area within a certain number, couple years. And so that's one of these opportunities that I think we have. We also have the Petrick Park enhancements that are coming, and where might we need to fill in. And then there's still the childcare issue that's in other areas besides just here. So, and I continue to work on that that piece for this year yet, and I have upcoming meetings coming up, further conversations about that. So we're going to go on to talking with Brian and the long-range planning that we have on the debt piece, and how that's an important part of this conversation to the county, and how we fund these projects that we just, that you have a copy of right now. So just to remind you, long-range planning is available with an ability to determine financing levels ahead of time. It combats inflation. Bonding allows for projects to be completed sooner rather than waiting to see if money's available. And as we know, things get costs more throughout time. Highway construction, you've seen that increase exponentially, vehicle costs. Citizens that use the services pay for the services, so as people move in and out of a county, the people that are here are paying for it over a period of time, rather than it being put all on the taxpayer that's just here at the time. Investments can be made that will help reduce reliance on property tax. We've got low cost of funds. We have lower borrowing rates that we can take advantage of. It makes budgeting for operations easier, and borrowing for long-term commitments keeps the tax rate flat, reducing fluctuations. And then if you see, if we look at this again, I just threw this back in here again to explain that, looking at how that is a jump right now for us a little bit, but it does tailor off and allow us to do these projects yearly. Questions before we hear from Brian?
I just have one comment that I think the report that you've given us is very comprehensive and concise, maybe even the most concise one that we've had in many years. So thank you for the work you put in and your staff as well. Thank you.
The new health insurance that we proposed, what are the co-pays there?
Still 500 and 1,000, or the co-pays? Oh, I'm sorry. It's still the same, so that once they meet that $500 deductible, everything's covered after that. And once they meet the $1,000 deductible, that's covered. That's just a part of the health insurance plan. Yeah, there's no additional cost to the county for that. It's a part of the package.
I thought I had it straight, and now with your answer, I think I got confused. So, the deductibles that we were paying for, we're still going to pay?
No.
No, that's-
No, Supervisor Becker is asking about co-pays.
Co-pays,
Yeah,
okay.
which is different, yeah.
Okay.
So we can pay a co-pay up to 500 for a single, and co-pays up to 1,000
Okay.
for family. After those are met, there is no outside out-of-pocket cost.
That's my question. Who pays that? That doesn't sound
The 500 and 1,000 is the employee.
six. You gotta give them a 2% raise and then charge them $1,000 a year for the insurance.
That is correct. That is a shift, yeah.
That's what you're proposing.
That's right.
And I have another question here. And also, it's not really 100, you said we have $100,000. I mean, huh?
Yeah, it does.
Oh,
It's on, I can
yeah.
see the light.
That, you said you're trying to get that financial advisor, but you said it was $100 million budget we have. Don't we have just like a 60 million? Because 40 of the 100 would be the county hospital, and they're pretty much by themselves. They're not really considered, we don't do anything there, so they take care of themselves. So we really only have a $60 million budget here, correct?
It's a whole
Is that
county
correct?
budget.
I'm just, it's,
Nope,
yeah.
nope, they're part of
Peter,
the
Paul,
county
Peter,
budget.
Paul. You can't, I'm just saying, it's not a true statement to say that we have $100 million. That's why we need a financial advisor. We only have 60. They take care of themselves. Bridget takes care of the county hospital. So I'm just want to get the clarity. We got, everybody's up on top, and we're truthful with everybody. I have one more question. No, I think I got it. All right, I think I got most of my questions. I got a couple more, but there's a lot there to
Yep.
absorb in a short time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just the intent, right, is
Yep.
that we have now until November that you have to look at this, so then you'll get a copy now of the, of the budget book. And certainly, that's why you're provided this much time, right, to ask questions. You can ask questions of the department heads, of course, if you have anything that you want to bring forward, but that is the intent, is that you'd have plenty of time to review and ask questions, yeah. If it's just related to your budget, I guess.
I'm just asking if we can, as department heads, receive the budget book that goes around, if they're going to ask us questions.
Oh,
I don't think,
I
not yet, probably.
haven't had time to think up
Yeah, I
questions
don't-
yet.
unless you have something from the presentation, but I don't expect you to look through the budget book and ask
Right.
questions.
No,
But if you had something from the presentation that you wanted to ask any department head or myself, but certainly, like, now, next week, Wednesday, we meet again, and you have time to absorb, and feel free to reach out to me and ask if you do have other follow-up questions. I'd be happy to meet with you, too. So that's, it's not intended for you to, you don't have to vote on anything today. It's just giving you the information, and I know it is a lot.
Any other questions on the presentation? If not, we can move on to the next issue. At this point, it's relatively, everybody's headed in the packet for the general fund updates and the county sales tax. Any questions on those two items? They were in your packet. Then we got departments, reports and/or requests, and Mary is up with a quarterly update for us.
Hello. I'll keep mine short. We've been busy moving upstairs from the lower level, from the first floor up to second floor the last couple months. That's been packing up and downsizing, and we've moved upstairs. So far, I've issued 105 marriage licenses this year. I think we're on track for that. We had a change in our marriage license information as far as when we have documents that aren't in English, that we ask for translation on those. So because of that, that has actually gone down a little bit. So, but we do have some still coming in. And when they do come in, it does work well with the translation. So that's been working out well.
Good.
I had wrapped up with auditors in the last couple months. There's been some after-the-fact questions and reporting back and forth type of a thing. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we had WCA in the Dells. I had met with the other county clerks while you guys are doing your trainings down there. And then last week, Wendy and I went to Wausau for 2 days of election training, just to keep up with everything as things change continually. Other than that, that's about it. But moving was the big thing. We still don't always know where things are in the office now, but we'll find it again.
Okay. Any questions for Mary? Thank you.
And then for Ann, she sent the packet along in the electronic packet. She is out on medical leave, so she's not here to present, but she did have the packet for you.
Anybody have any concerns with that packet? That's why, yeah. Might have to, because, did anybody else find it? Because when I go to it on mine, it says wait a minute, there it came up. Now it came up. First time it said it was empty. I thought I had seen it before. Yep. Anybody have any questions on Ann's update? Well, hearing none, we'll just say thank you. The next item is this thing that keeps continuing, and Mary asked me if I wanted to put it on the resolution regarding 2024 ETC funds that were put on hold. And I've been asking for anybody to bring up information. Do we release the hold to the original? Do we want to repurpose it? And as of yet, I've gotten zero information. So I said, I'm going to keep it there till I get an answer.
What are those funds for?
They came from the transmission line. They had, I don't have it in front of me, they had some, I think money had to go towards, was it environmental and/or
Yeah.
something along that line? There was some restrictions came with it. But money for the park fit the category, I remember that. And that wouldn't really necessarily be environmental. I don't even know where the rules are in there someplace. I haven't gotten back to them, but, and I don't, right now I don't remember the amount. It was a little over 100,000, I believe.
Yeah, and we had identified those for economic development funds at one point. There was a resolution put into place, I believe, for that, so.
At what point was it, and I totally blew it off, don't remember it?
Yeah, that was Dave, when Dave Carlson was here.
I thought we
Yeah, I was
redirected.
So that-
them- I
so
thought we
that money
redirected
then-
To the park for the.
Okay, then there's something in the
Dietrich
communication,
Park.
because, what's that?
I thought we redirected those to.
There
Peter
were
Park.
some that, so the I don't remember what the amount is, but there was a portion of that that was directed to Petrick, and the majority, though, of it to an economic development
Okay.
fund.
Then somehow the communication, because Mary's the one that brought it to me, said according to the records she found, it had never been redesignated, or, so there's something that needs to be corrected in that category, maybe?
I'll get with Rebecca, we'll look
Yeah.
at it.
Okay, yeah,
You can talk.
to find out, if we've done it, great, but that was the information that came to me, was that it had not been released or redirected. And it was-
Yeah, and I think that at that time that Dave Carlson did have some plans for economic development. I just don't think those were seen through fruition. So, but yeah, then if we could either redesignate them or figure out what their original purpose was for.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for,
I'm still a little mixed. That's the ones that come through several years ago. we're
Right,
talking
yeah,
about.
yeah. And originally.
We just
I-
have one payment. We aren't getting a
No, 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 no.
continuous,
This,
because like
this,
Town of Gale gets a
this was money
continuum,
that
yeah.
came in and was
Right.
directed to certain purposes.
Right.
And then at some point, some was directed towards the park in regard to, I believe it was a pond. And then something happened with that and it got put on hold. The money got put on hold. And according to the information Mary gave me, it was still sitting on hold and not doing anything for anybody. That's why I said we need to find what
The
and
first
where.
chunk went down to Trempealeau, didn't it? For something to
the
do.
first what?
Some of that money right off the bat went to Trempealeau, didn't it? For the park down there, for a walking trail, or it went down that way, but we've been sitting on this for.
Maybe the township of Trempealeau.
That government building down there where they,
But
I
we've
I
been
don't
sitting
recall,
on
there
this
was,
for a
it was
while.
Like
distributed out to a
$500,000
couple,
went there.
2 or 3 places, I believe. And then this got a hold put on it, according to Mary's information, it was January of '24. And it's been sitting in the hold pattern since then, according to the records she has.
Yeah, it is. Apparently, what I was told anyway, that there were a lot of projects that went out, that the majority of the money went out for.
Yeah, the majority. This,
Yeah, yeah.
this is a relatively small amount compared to what we
Correct.
got total,
I'm
right?
pretty sure we did a resolution, and then portion of that went to parks and a portion stayed in what would be an economic development fund. I'll talk to Mary about that.
Out of this money that was put on hold.
Correct,
Okay, well,
yeah,
if we can get that cleared up, that would be a good thing,
sure.
okay? Okay, item 12, an update / discussion / possible action on county supervisor registrations and room cancellations with Mary.
Thank you.
And I believe you had something out there for us to look at.
I
didn't
did,
you?
I had a sheet in the packet as well.
Yep.
It was regarding, it just, if it's something that's been ongoing, I don't know, but since I've taken over, just with the WCA, we had a bunch of people sign up, and by county board rules, everyone is eligible to go to WCA, and I think we had like 13 people sign up for it. But when it all shook out, we had one person that had signed up for it, said they wanted to go. We got the room reservations at, $98 a night, and then the $180 for registration for the WCA conference. And they never showed up. They never called to cancel. They just didn't show up. I don't know if they didn't remember. I don't know how you don't remember. I did send them an email saying, don't forget your stuff's in your mail. You need to have all this before you get down there over the weekend, that type of thing. So that was money we just ate. We had another person that canceled, like a week ahead of time. They called, and I was able to get the rooms refunded, but the registration was already sent in because they had to order food and such. So the registration fee, the $180, we did not get back, which just brought me to asking some questions to other clerks, how they do that, what we do. Is that something we should eat that money? Should we expect that back from the supervisor or a committee member as well if they would go to some other type of a conference or meeting? Just wondering to get that on the table for conversation about what should or shouldn't, what you'd like to do with that for reimbursing that back.
Question, Mary, when you call to make those room reservations, are they automatically giving you that price for the room rate for that conference?
Yep, we get the conference.
You're not giving them any special information other than the slip that says we're tax exempt?
Yep, well, we let them know it's for whatever conference they're going to, and then there's usually a room block, and then, I have to send in information, so we get the state rate and the tax exempt, get all the taxes. Not, they'll give us a state rate, but then they charge us tax unless we send the tax exempt form, so that's got to get sent in after the fact. And if I'm sending you, then I have to send the credit card authorizations. They know it's okay to charge the card because you're not taking the card with you. So it's a lot of handling back and forth.
I'm just trying to figure out if supervisors were required to make their own hotel reservations, how would they, if they're putting it on their credit card, how are they receiving the tax exempt portion of it then? Like,
Yeah.
is it possible to work out a way to do that with your office then?
Yep, I could send out, because it's an S-211 form we send out to all the places.
That you give
And
us.
I could just send that out to all the supervisors that plan on going, so they could forward that on, or take it with them when they check out, however they prefer to do that. I mean, it's one of the possibilities. That's one of the counties that I reached out to. That's what they said, that they have all their committee people and supervisors make their own reservations and do their own registrations, and that way, if they don't go, it's on them, that the county's not hung with that money. And that's an option. I mean, there were several options that they came up with. One person said they'd get a hold of the county board chair and make sure that the chair approved that we got that money back from that person. Like I said, the other ones, or get some language so that if they don't go, that they reimburse it. It's money they owe us back if they don't. I mean, things come up, I get that. And the one person, like I said, they called a week ahead of time, which we were able to refund some, but not all. And it's a waste of money. The one person I don't understand, they just didn't reach out at all. They didn't go to anything. They didn't even a call, so I could try and get, rooms refunded or anything, so.
So you're just looking to see what we feel we should do?
Yep, if we want to do something
Well, I think
with-
we've got to come up with a policy of some kind.
Yep, correct. That's what I'm
And I
looking to
guess
see what you guys
obviously,
wanna
we'd
do.
have to get, if there's a death in the family or something like that, we can understand, but unless they have somewhat of a decent excuse, we expect them to pay that back, wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Either pay it back, or Mary suggested another one that, I really appreciate Mary doing these things.
Right.
For me.
Right.
I hope we can continue something that way, with her dealing with it, but we need to establish, I'm not probably sure, I'll call it a penalty for somebody that doesn't
Yeah, I would say.
either go or cancel ahead of time, enough time, so the county isn't out the money for a no-show. That could.
late on this.
It's too late on this one. But something along the line, myself, either they become penalized and have to make their own reservations for a period of time for a no-show, and then come back to the county for reimbursement if they go. That would be one option. I don't, if you've
Yeah,
got,
that was one county in the south, they said that once a member does that, then they're off the list, they make their own reservations, and they do it on their own for their 2-year term, for the next convention, whatever, I don't know what the stipulation was.
pay back, plus they would be off, or just that they would be off?
That they would, no, he didn't say that, he said they would eat it, but that from then on, they would be off and they'd make their own reservations and
I
just,
think we could
so. it's- you've got
penalize this
options.
particular person for sure that way.
yeah,
Can't we do that even though it's
well, I don't.
past the fact or not?
I don't think we can do it after the fact, because this has been accepted practice with, and I don't think there's any kind of policy in place that I'm aware of.
So we couldn't say
So-
that they have to make their own reservations
We
even.
could say from here on, they have to make their own
Okay.
reservations and then seek reimbursement from the county afterwards.
Right.
By showing receipts and everything.
See, and I would even almost, and again, I think it is, and makes it very nice for those that want to attend, that someone's taking care of the reservation and the hotel confirmation and with WCA. And I think it's an educational benefit for supervisors and a place where we can network and things like that. So it's a very valuable experience. However, I would even go as far to say is, it's either logging into the computer on 2 separate sites to reserve your registration and your hotel, and, I mean, it's easy, or 2 phone calls to these specific places to do that. I think for all the things that the supervisors do, that's a very simple task. So I could go either way. We probably could try it this way and pose a rule that if they're a no-show for anything less than a catastrophic reason,
Right, yeah.
that they pay.
They are required to reimburse the county, and they go on the.
Do it yourself.
On the bad person list.
Yeah. And then,
I'm good with that.
but I would be fine doing it the other way as long as it's tax
Is
exempt.
this something we can establish at this committee, or do we have to make a recommendation to the full county board?
I think the whole board's gotta agree.
Yes, if you want to incorporate this into your county board rules, you certainly could. Make a recommendation to the full board. You would need a resolution with it as well.
Okay.
And there would be an appropriate spot. I don't know if Mary's looked at this, and we haven't had a chance to connect, but I'm looking at 2.02 subsection 32, training and seminars, where there's a whole host of provisions there, and then we could add in a provision about however you guys want to address this issue.
And that would that be something we want to do on a now basis, or since how we're coming up on an election again, to set it up for the new board in April to
We
incorporate
have
this
to have that
or-
in there before December, don't we?
Right, and I think historically you have looked at some of these in November.
Okay,
And so if, Mary, if you want to start that wording and then circulate it with me as well, if you can send it to me, and then we can bring it back in November for your consideration, and
Yeah. Don't we have a meeting next week?
we
that
need
too
to have
much?
a resolution.
Okay.
And we don't have that today, so.
Right, but don't we have a meeting next week? at this
We don't
committee?
have an emergency meeting or a special meeting for exec finance that I'm aware of. I know you have a additional county board. Okay. I think it's a budget prep meeting.
so the consensus here is that between Mary and Susan, we're going to have something to look at, vote on, move forward at our November meeting. Is that, okay?
Yes, thank you.
Dumps more on you. You don't need, you need more to do. Anything else on that, Mary? Or you
No,
got-
and I don't know if that would include committee members too, people that aren't county board supervisors, but people are on committees. I don't know how many of those tend to go to register, need registration for conferences or get rooms as well, if that, we're only working on county board supervisor at this point, or even employees, I
You
guess.
know,
I don't know how.
Community members on committees or supervisors?
I think
Or
let's look at it. It is a policy decision, so I'm going to recognize that, but I think if there's some chance that there's a citizen member that would go to a conference, that the rules would apply, that we had
I
extended
think-
that far.
Yes, I think they should. Yes. Okay. Okay, we got that covered. Item 13 is a resolution authorizing issuance of not to exceed $4,400,000 general obligation promissory notes with Rebecca, and I think I saw he was on earlier. Is he still there? Yeah, yeah.
There's Brian. Brian, do you want to, so this is introducing the capital improvements plan for 2026 that you received a copy of, and how we would manage that as far as the debt issuance. I'll let Brian step in.
Sure. Thank you all. Good morning. I'll use the introducing as the operative term that Becky used. And certainly, if you think back to last year, we're following the same kind of procedural calendar in that along with the capital plan and the budget, the board would similarly then consider a resolution that would authorize the issuance and sale of the financing required to fund the capital plan. This is the first step in that part of the process. And so typically exec finance reviews and forwards on to the full board that authorizing resolution, which has been prepared and is in front of all of you. You'll recall that the authorizing resolution requires a three-quarter vote of the full board. And again, that's kind of the first gate you have to get through with respect to statute. It establishes the not to exceed amount. It generally states the purpose of the financing. And then we would essentially kind of wait until we get into about the first quarter of next year, come back before this group to kind of walk through the general finance plan in a higher level of detail. And then also establish the execution calendar. So as of right now, this binds the county really in no way. This is just the first step in the process of getting towards the actual financing itself. We have the county's capital plan as it stands right now. We've used that to preliminarily size an issue of just under 4.4 million, and it's been grossed up a little bit just to account for any contingency or unknowns that might transpire between now and say next year when we look to move forward with the actual financing itself. And so that's where you wind up with the $4.4 million. It is inclusive of all costs of issuance as well. This also falls in line with the plan, the general plan that was established last year, where we essentially took somewhere in the neighborhood of $6 to $6.5 million over roughly a 5-year span. And we built out various debt structures for all of you to review and coalesce around that would establish kind of a long-term path towards tax mitigation with respect to the new debt service. The budget that the county administrator has presented to you includes the expected debt service on this issue for essentially 2027 and later. At least the long-term plan does. The budget for 26 does not. When you issue in 26, the first debt service is in 27. Certainly the debt service from the 2025 financing is in your budget for 2026. But there will be no fiscal impact in the next fiscal period, being 26, first payment in 27. And so again, we're following the same path that we looked at last time. And so we'll get into the finer, more granular details when it comes time to discuss this financing with specificity and the actual sale calendar associated with it. But really, the first step is procedurally for the exec finance committee to forward the resolution on to the board for consideration at one of your upcoming meetings in tandem with adoption of the budget, which includes your capital financing. Any initial questions? I'm happy to further embellish on any other matters that you'd like. As I mentioned, there is no immediate budget impact for 2026.
Anybody got any other questions?
Moving forward, this is Bridget, Brian. Moving forward, will we be seeing these similar graph outlays with all of our combined debt issuance?
Yeah, we've prepared an initial forecast of the levy that was captioned in Rebecca's presentation that she just provided you. So we have that initial estimate. And yes, when it comes time to pick this up again, to actually sell and issue the financing in 2026, we would go through the more granular conversation. I think as was stated previously, your borrowing capacity in and of itself, which is limited under statute, meaning the total principal amount of debt that you can have outstanding for general obligation debt, is really not a fundamental and constraining issue. You have something like, even with this issue in next year, prospectively, you'd have something like 118.6 million available to you. So the vast majority of your capacity, something like over 2/3 available to you. It's really looking at the tax impact on a long-term structural basis and probably revisiting briefly the longer-term capital plan that's been discussed at probably just not just the departmental administration level, but to all of you as being looking forward in time over a multi-year window to understand things like tax impacts, et cetera, and where we have opportunities to structure the debt to meet your needs. And so nothing is fully baked at this point, and we want to use those conversations at a later time to get into the more granular detail, all of you to weigh in with any decisions, understanding that we've already kind of built a plan, but it needs all of your imprimatur as well.
And you will also have the bond rating at that time, or letting us know how that might affect our bond rating?
All fair, yes. And so the rating comes really in hand just before the sale of the obligations. But yes, it is our job to help you understand the impacts of the additional debt and what it might mean for your rating.
Thank you.
This is Dave here. This is just a preliminary saying we intend to borrow is really all it is. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. It serves a number of purposes, the first of which being the statutory requirement associated with the preliminary authorization, the 3/4 vote of the county board, stating their intent to issue this debt. And then number two, what is in the language itself is some narrative around effectively your ability to reimburse. So if we move forward in time and you begin to make some of these expenditures, there's language in it that documents your intent to potentially reimburse yourself out of the proceeds of the obligations, and that's related to the tax status of the debt being that you want it to be tax exempt. And so, again, the first and primary purpose is for statutory authorization. The second being puts you in good stead from a tax exemption perspective.
Anybody else with any questions? Get this up here. And we actually do, I mean, did you have anything else to add for us? Brian? Did you have anything?
I have
else?
nothing else to add, but
Okay.
I believe, I'm going off of memory, but, I believe you have an ordinance that requires that this resolution pass through the exec finance
Right,
committee and
yeah.
then recommended out of here to the county board. So I have nothing else to add.
Okay, well, we have a resolution in our packet. I assume we have something on paper here someplace. So, at this point, with no other questions, I would be looking for a motion to move this resolution authorizing not to exceed 4.4 million in general obligation promissory notes to move it on to full county board. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. And a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of moving this on to full county board, say aye. Aye. What? Do we need a voice vote on this?
That's not a bad one, because it's money.
Okay, okay. I didn't think it was money yet, other than it was just the intention more than the money, but, okay,
It's a lot of money.
consensus, yeah.
Turner, yes.
Yep, Turner
Becker, yes.
Awesome, yes.
and Larson, yes. Stacia has left the meeting. So. It has, excuse me, the motion carries, and we'll move it on to full county board.
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Okay?
Can I mean, I should, since we're still on it, and it's on the agenda. But Becky, this is the budget, right, correct? Does this budget, this is for this, next year, does it reflect in there someplace where we get that 400,000 back for highway that they gave?
That's in part of this,
It's in this.
part
Right.
of this.
Remember last year we gave up that money?
Yep.
To, and they were gonna pay it back this year. I just wanted to make sure that it's in there. Okay.
Which I'm guessing is part of the reason why the amount requested for borrowing is smaller than past history. That, I'm guessing that has something to do with that?
We're not doing as much of the roads, that's why they're gonna take more from roads from the general if they need to, if they get more
Right.
projects completed, so that's a big part of it. We've identified the 1.5 million from general fund to fund additional projects in 2026 if they need those.
And
But the 4.4 with the 450, whatever, what did we give them last year? I can't remember about that. You took it out and put it into, what'd they put that in?
Remodel.
To the remodel, right?
Right, yeah.
And then this year we were gonna get it back.
Yeah.
But that wasn't gonna come through, that was just gonna come out of,
Well, if I've got this right, some of that money is some of the increase in the general fund, and then some of that's coming back out of the general fund to go towards highway.
as long as it's
Okay,
reflective.
okay.
Correct.
That's my, yeah,
As
that's
long as it's
my, yeah.
reflective in the budget, that's all.
Because a certain amount, there again, that's
Yeah.
probably technical over my head, but if that was borrowed money that went into the general fund, it had a specific purpose, would have to go back out of the general fund for a specific purpose. I think. Okay, we have that passed. Next item on the agenda is, thank you, Brian.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks.
Yep. Confirm date for the next meeting. It says November 3 at 8 a.m. Any conflict with that I'm not aware of any? Okay, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting at 10:05.